Hello and welcome back to the Metropolitan Culture Corner. It's good to see you, even though I'm melting. The summer is officially here. This month, we go behind the scenes with Lulú Txispún, burlesque dancer, teacher, and festival organizer extraordinaire. Born in Barcelona, she grew up in a house that was located right across from the famous El Molino in Barcelona's Poble Sec neighborhood. And even as a very, very young girl, she always dreamed of performing on its famous stage someday. As she got older, she started taking ballroom dancing classes and dancing competitively, later experimenting with other styles such as salsa, bachata, funk, lindy hop. But then she discovered burlesque in 2009 and knew that she'd found her calling. Fast forward to today, now a professional burlesque performer, Lulú has traveled the world performing at festivals and even sometimes serving as a judge at international burlesque events. She's also taught burlesque since 2013 and is the co-founder of the Barcelona Burlesque Meeting, a festival which draws performers from all over the world. Joining her in this interview is one of her artistic collaborators in the burlesque meeting, Yiste. Just one name, like Prince or Madonna. Yiste is originally from Caracas, Venezuela. He now makes his home in Barcelona. He is an acclaimed photographer known specifically for working with burlesque performers. His images are stunning. He is also a graphic artist and a performing artist himself and is known for producing transgressive, often political neo-burlesque, as well as collaborating with the Barcelona Burlesque Meeting. He is currently the producer of the monthly burlesque show Foxy Cabaret. Yiste will be a part of the interview and he will also be assisting us with Spanish-English translation. Now, burlesque is a commonly misunderstood art form, but one that has played a significant role in the underground and sometimes not so underground performance culture of major cities across the world and especially Barcelona. The word burlesque comes from the Italian word burla, meaning a joke or a mockery. And the original burlesque performances usually parodied the politics of the time. Its roots can be traced back to the 1840s in Europe, and in America it really took off in the 1860s. It became really popular as a form of entertainment in the late 19th century, partly because it defied traditional Victorian societal expectations and conventions. It was one of the few venues in which women could both assert their sexuality and also make their own money. After the American Prohibition era ended, burlesque lost a lot of its former glamour and the general perception changed. People began to see it as seedy, not so respectable form of entertainment. Until the 1970s, when the neo-burlesque revolution occurred and a modernized form of burlesque incorporating modern music started to grow in popularity. The aesthetics of burlesque have evolved over the years and today can range from 1920s flapper to 1950s pinup, from avant-garde to edgy and modern, from funny to elegant to campy. It often celebrates female empowerment as well as the empowerment of the LGBTQ community. It pushes back against traditional stereotypes of what a beautiful or sexy female body should look like, as well as traditional definitions of what is masculine, what is feminine. And these days, it seems like its popularity is only growing in the city of Barcelona. As we'll talk about, Barcelona has a history of subversive art and theater, as well as erotic art, which makes burlesque and neo-burlesque about as Barcelona as you can get. Burlesque, theater, and dance all flourished at the end of the 19th century, and it was especially important during the Franco dictatorship when it offered a welcome escape during this repressive era. Now that you know a bit of the history of burlesque, please welcome one of Barcelona's brightest burlesque stars. Try saying that 3 times fast. Lulú Txispún and Yiste. Thank you very much for joining us on the Metropolitan Culture Corner. How are you?
We are very good. Dying with heat.
You guys look beautiful. I can't tell, but yes, it's very hot.
Thank you.
So, the history of burlesque, as well as theater, a lot of performing arts in general, is really tied to the neighborhood where you grew up. Lulú, growing up in front of El Molino, how did that influence your desire to perform?
Pues fue totalmente por eso, por vivir delante del molino. Yo era muy pequeñita, que vivía con mis abuelos, que ellos vivían casi frente del molino. Cuando salía por la tarde, noche al balcón, veía el molino y las aspas del molino girar, de las señoras con las plumas en la cabeza. Yo pensaba, pero qué bonito. Y esto que yo no podía entrar en el molino porque yo era muy pequeña, pero solo con lo que había afuera y lo que me contaba mi abuelo. Y no sé, me fue agarrando, apasionando. Y luego había teatros en aquel momento, también el Apolo, el Arnau, con las luces de neones. Decidí que yo quería ser vedette del molino.
Since she was a little kid, she was growing up in front of Molino. Her grandparents were always saying to her like the stories that were happening inside the Molino, and she was looking at the aspas of the Molino, like turning around, and the posters of the vedettes and the performers, like full of glamour and full of feathers. She was not able to like go in, so she was only listening to the stories about the magic that was happening inside of Molino. And since there, she started to dream about it.
The image of this little girl standing outside saying, I want to be that someday.
Yes.
So you've always loved dancing, you always loved the idea of performing, but I understand it was your husband who actually encouraged you to start dancing burlesque. I don't know if a lot of women can say that, so how did that happen?
Fue el primero que descubrió que en la escuela donde yo estaba bailando, y él, este es mi marido.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Productor del Barcelona Burlesque Meeting. Y nosotros bailábamos en una escuela de baile de Barcelona, y un día él vio que en una clase, un día una profesora llevaba boas de pluma y dijo, ostras, porque él sabía mi afición a todo esto. Entonces averiguamos el qué, ¡pum! Allí empecé todo en el año 2009.
2009, wow. Okay, well, this is Jordi. Lulú husband. Knowing this little girl was watching these amazing stories about Molino, it was a class, no, dance class that they were doing with a feather boa. He was saying to her, you know, maybe you should care about this. Maybe you feel interested about it. It was the year 2009 when she decided to get herself into that class.
And then the rest is history, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah. But when you started performing burlesque, was it scary because it involves taking off your clothes, or did you feel empowered? Did you feel good about it from the beginning? That's one aspect of it that some people who haven't tried it says, oh, I could never do that in front of an audience.
Me encantó, empoderadísima. Y la primera vez que hice pezoneras fue en unas fiestas de la Merced, delante de la catedral, en la escuela Bailongo, que en aquel momento ya éramos unas 10 o así, y Marina y yo, Marina era mi profesora, decidimos hacer pezoneras allí, delante de 2.000 personas. Cuando vi la reacción, la gente no, aplaudiendo, gritando, toda la plaza, dije, pero esto es fantástico.
Claro, el burlesque como terapia. She felt a power of herself. I mean, the first time that she ended up with putting the pasties out, you know, the nipple pasties, it was in front of the cathedral during a Merced festival in the street, in front of 2,000 people with her professor. There were like 10 doing a performance, but only 2 of them decided to do it. And by the moment that they did it,
Only 2 of them decided to completely take off everything except for the G-string and the pasties, right?
except for the nipples, exactly. The people were screaming and clapping, and that was like a moment of empowerment.
You know, doing the show in front of the cathedral as part of La Merced, which is a cultural festival, it gives it a legitimacy that I think it's so funny how Barcelona is like, yeah, in front of the cathedral, why not? Well, you mentioned Marina just now, the director of the Barcelona Burlesque Experience School. She's had a big impact on you and on your personal philosophy. What is it that you discovered studying with her, working with her, that's really influenced you as a performer and also as a teacher?
Cuando yo empecé a hacer burlesque con Marina, era al principio de que Marina empezó a hacer burlesque, porque ella principalmente hacía danza del vientre. Ella ya tenía esta actitud de empoderamiento para la mujer, de que no teníamos que mirar ni el cuerpo, ni que si éramos altas, ni bajas, ni guapas, ni feas, y tirar para adelante y hacer lo que tú querías hacer y divertirte. Y esto me ha marcado para toda mi carrera, absolutamente. Luego, pues nuestras carreras se separaron, pero sí, yo siempre reconoceré que yo salí de su, no sé, de su persona, ¿no?
Basically, what she's saying is Marina and her, let's say, start together in burlesque kind of at the same time, even though she was her professor, but she was a belly dancer professor. She already had this empowerment on herself. She never discriminated the students by their body or the image or their looks. What she keeps from that experience with her, it was mostly that empowerment, that not discriminatory towards the body of the others. So she always going to recognize that she's a big part of her career, even though that their career is split apart. She always going to recognize that something of what Lulú Txispún is coming from the legacy of Marina.
And especially the point that you made about being tall, short, fat, thin, older, younger, the pressure that women feel from society to be perfect is something that I think is really not there in the burlesque world. So I think that's really interesting.
Total. Yo como profesora también ha sido mi principal, cuando venían las chicas con vergüenzas, que yo no puedo porque yo no sé bailar, o porque yo no puedo porque tengo barriga, o porque no, esto era lo primero que les sacaba de la cabeza. Tú lo que tienes que venir a hacer es divertirte, pasártelo bien.
The thing with the burlesque is about to have fun, to enjoy, and to empower yourself. It's the art of found into your own persona, that sensuality and that having fun, and otherwise it have no sense to do this.
So when you're teaching someone, where do you start? How do you help someone get comfortable?
Bueno, pues primero esto que lo que vienen es a divertirse, a pasárselo bien, esto. Y luego lo primero que hago es colocarlas bien y hacer la prueba de él. Voy a comprar al supermercado, voy a bailar. Ando así para ir a comprar al supermercado, no. Ando así porque voy a bailar. Y que se vea la diferencia. Y ahora escoger, ¿qué queréis? ¿Ir al supermercado o veros guapas? Cuando ya hacen sus shows propios, buscar la originalidad, buscar dentro de ti tu propio lenguaje, sobre todo originalidad, por favor.
Well, basically, it's her own technique, but it's basically from the same starts in the burlesque. When people came to the classes, like feeling like shy or feeling like insecure or whatever, there's this technique that you have about lose yourself when you are going to the supermarket and lose yourself when you're gonna dance. Like you need to learn the difference between one and the other, and then you need to choose which one you wanna keep, which one is the one that empowers yourself, or you're gonna be like the low one. Which is a very interesting message right now, like the feminism and everything, like female empowerment. It has a lot to do with this. Then after that, creating a character and becoming a professional means also being original, like find your own personal language and grow up from there.
I love that idea of I'm going to the supermarket or I'm going to dance. So which one are you today?
Yeah.
Speaking of finding your own language, I've seen videos of you, Lulu, with props and costumes and very funny props sometimes, a lot of humor. What role does humor play in your shows, and how do you find your own language or your own way of doing it?
Y es que soy así. Entonces, no sé por qué mi cabeza loca me lleva pues, a hacer de pato, a hacer de rana, o si hago lo mismo que hacen los demás, yo me aburro. La palabra burlesque viene de burla. Entonces, es que lo primero que tienes que hacer es reírte de ti mismo. Yo no voy por la calle vestida de pato, pero en este momento yo me río cuando me veo con el huevo aquel de 2 metros. Esto es lo que yo iría haciendo quizás por la calle, pero no puedo. Entonces, pues tengo el escenario para hacer estas locuras.
Te ridiculizas a ti mismo, le quitas las herramientas a los demás para que puedan utilizarlas en tu contra. Since the beginning, she has been feeling interested by this kind of humor. And in my opinion, actually, it's proper for the burlesque. Burlesque is the mix of the word burla in Spanish, which is mockery, and erotic. So it's kind of the mix between being clowny and being funny with the idea to be sexy and recreate all of this art. She said if she can be on the street dressing as a dog with a gigantic egg, she will do it. But as she cannot, she has the stage to do so. It's important to know that when you ridiculous yourself and you use it in your favor, nobody else can use it against you. Just have fun and enjoy it.
So basically, if you take all the crazy things in your head and make them into your own personal language, laugh at yourself first, you're giving people permission to enjoy the show, and you're taking any power away from anyone who might want to make fun of what you're doing.
Exactly.
In your case, you said that you've always felt like a clown. It comes naturally, but if someone doesn't necessarily know how to create their own show, how do you help them find their persona?
Que se escuchen ellas mismas, que se sientan ellas mismas y que expresen lo que ellas quieren expresar. Cada una tiene que encontrar su camino. Y si ellas quieren hacer clásico, pues miramos de hacer clásico, no hay ningún problema.
Creo que el trabajo del profesor precisamente es acompañarlos en la ruta de conseguir su propio lenguaje. Well, basically, as a professor, she just accompanies people during their own personal process, because as it's a personal language, each one have it inside. So if someone wanted to do classic, they can accompany them and help them to do the best classic they can. A burlesque classic is more beauty, it's more glam. It's not what Lulu feel attracted to do. She can do it, but it's not her language. So just accompanying the people, and once they discover what kind of burlesque they wanted to do, make them do it.
Encourage them.
Exactly.
Yes, of course.
And so where did the idea for the burlesque meeting come from? You're already very busy teaching, performing. Why was it important to have a festival like that in Barcelona?
Se creó por culpa de una muy amiga nuestra, americana, que se llama Sargent Device, que es una performer de California, de San Francisco. La conocí por casualidad en un festival de burlesque en Londres.
They met this performer from San Francisco called Sargent Device. They met her in London.
Y ella vino la semana después a Barcelona porque teníamos un showcito pequeñito y la invitamos a venir a bailar.
They invited her to come here to perform in a small show that they have.
Sarge se quedó en mi casa con Jordi, mi hijo. Ella está loca como una cabra y yo también. Y este también y mi hijo también. Ella solo hablaba inglés, yo hablo fatal el inglés, pero no sé qué pasó, hubo como un crash nos lo pasamos bien, no, lo siguiente.
During the time that they were doing the show here, they were staying together at her house. Her son, Jordi, her husband, and her, the Sergeant Device performer, and nobody speak the other language, but they managed to find a way to have so much fun, and it was super crazy.
Y bueno, Serge decidió que cada vez que venía a Europa, venía a Barcelona, a nuestra casa, y se estaba 4 o 5 días de vacaciones con nosotros, a estar con su familia catalana. My Catalan family.
So she decided, like, every time that she came to Europe, she will stay like 4 or 5 days at her place with her Catalan family, just as a holiday, no performing or anything.
Un día, al cabo de 3 años.
Yeah, it was in 2018. I think it was like in February. We were having dinner and she said, okay, I'm coming here every year. I love you. You are my family. But I want you to produce a festival so I can perform here in Barcelona.
Every time I came.
Every time I can. And she said,
You are crazy.
And I said, yes. Maybe. And our son said, yes. So that was the beginning of the festival.
That
was the beginning.
So, like 6 months later, we start with the first edition. That was a small festival with local performers, and that was the beginning. And on the second edition, we started with applications and after the second edition, the pandemic came. But we were able to do online festival. That was great, really. We had like, I don't remember how many performers from all around the world, from South America, from Australia, from South Africa, from North America, from Canada. It was crazy. I know the pandemic was complicated, but for us, it gave us
like a boost.
Yeah, on 2021, still more crazy because we made the festival online and live
at the same
time, 2 different festivals.
Ole.
Yeah.
But it seems like the response has been super positive if keep it going.
Yeah.
And Yiste, when did you get involved? Because you're also involved in the festival.
This year. This is my first year in the festival, actually. I have been going to the festival a couple of times, but I'm also myself a producer. I start to work with them a lot, also with Lulú, because I take her to my shows sometimes. My first show that I produced in Barcelona was with her. We didn't know each other properly, but then we start to work together. We start to meet each other more closely. And I was doing burlesque before back in Venezuela, where I came from, for years and years and years. And then when we were doing it here, we were speaking about it, all of the things that we were doing, all of the ideas that we have. The shows were growing and growing and growing, and then in a moment we're like, you want to be part of the festival? And I'm like, yes, of course. For me, it's such a goal.
It's so cool to hear you guys talking because you're all obviously so excited about the work that you do, and that just makes me happy. I do want to ask you more, Yiste, about your career as well, but before I forget, when is the next edition of the burlesque meeting?
The last weekend of September.
26, 26, 27, 28 September.
Okay. So people watching, you have to check out the Instagrams of the Barcelona Burlesque meeting and the website and stuff so that you'll be able to see who's on the roster and go see it.
So the festival is so much fun. It's such an experience to live. If you don't know anything about burlesque, this is a place to learn.
Yeah.
Like, you will see every kind of different genres. Also, meet some of the artists on person, because it's also a meeting. So after the show, there's always the artists around talking to people. So it's a good time. It's such an experience. It's very nice to see it.
So you, Yiste, you mentioned that you're from Venezuela originally. Yeah. And Lulú, you've performed in festivals all over Europe, all over the place. So what's the difference between the burlesque scene in Venezuela or in Canada or in Germany? Is there a big difference in the vibe, in the feeling?
In Venezuela, there is not like a scene of burlesque properly. Burlesque in Venezuela was only made by big theater that wanted to recreate Chicago, for example, or recreate Moulin Rouge, the musical. But like a scene, it doesn't exist. I created a show there that was basically the first one. From that show, a lot of other performers then grew from that. Maybe I was the pioneer of this. But also, there's another Venezuelans around the world that ended up being part of the burlesque scene on different other countries, and we all connect each other because we are like the only few that do this. But from my perspective, there is a difference between different countries of the identity of burlesque, but basically we are not so many. Like, it's such a niche of people that do it that we connect with our little differences, let's call it.
A ver, la diferencia más grande que quizás que he notado es más o menos las canadienses, europeas, burlescas. Más o menos van por el mismo camino. Las australianas también son muy potentes. Las australianas son muy potentes. Yo creo que el burlesque americano es bastante diferente al burlesque europeo. A nosotras, a las europeas, nos llaman las princesitas.
She's saying like the North American burlesque is quite different to the other ones. The Australians have all of this power. They are very strong, but she said the European performers they are being called the little princess. But then the North American burlesque performer is like another kind of thing. I feel like it's way more pin-up and clownery, like 50s, let's call it in a way. But they call European more like the little princess, and I guess that is coming from the classical glam burlesque, you know, the very Parisian.
Sí, porque hay clásico muy clásico, como Belle Époque, primeros del siglo XX, todas las italianas.
It's like feathers.
Sí, y una estética art déco.
So the aesthetic in Europe is more based on the kind of 1920s El Molino type concept, whereas the American is more like after World War II.
Exactly. Like the American ones is more like 50s, pin-ups, rockabilly, like that kind of style. Meanwhile, the European one is more like the glam girl from the 20s.
So when they say you guys are princesses, is this a compliment or is this like a bad thing?
I think it's a compliment.
I don't know.
I think it's a compliment. Kind of the celebration of the difference between the styles.
Que ahora también en Estados Unidos hay muchas performers que utilizan como músicas como twerk, hacen mucho suelo, más neo-burlesque.
Neo-burlesque is like the modern version of what burlesque is.
What's the difference between them?
Neo-burlesque is made with modern music, modern things. And if you do burlesque with hip-hop, for example, that could be neo-burlesque. Americans do a lot of that too.
In Europe también hay.
In Europe, there are people, but it's true that it's more one style of the other.
When you mentioned that you've produced shows in Caracas and then here, your shows have been described as political and transgressive. So what make, as you mentioned, the origins of burlesque were often making fun of a political figure or the political state of society at the time. These days, what is considered transgressive burlesque? Not much can shock people these days.
This is the situation. My show used to be called Rock and Love. And during the time that we were doing it in Venezuela, it was in the middle of the dictatorship. So we were doing burlesque in a dictatorship, which means not just that it was going to be complicated towards the people and what we're going to perform and what we're going to do, but also was a fight against, well, basically everything. Like even to make the costumes, it was so complicated because found the rhinestones, for example, I was complaining for that, but then I realized that this is what is defining our style. If we don't find feathers, then we figured out what to do with that, to change it, to continue the performance. And when we realized that we were not able to do classic burlesque, we started to take more serious about having the neo-burlesque performance. I mean, when we were doing it, the response of the people was so big that we started to take it like very serious. We were openly against the government. At the same time, we were being a target for the religious groups. So every time that we performed, it was something happening in the city. Once we were performing in a city called Maracay, and they had only access to the venue, they put fire on the street to not allow people to get in. It was a controversy, but I think we, in a way, became like the voice of people that have no voice. It's a country where suddenly everybody tells you how to do the things, and that's the only right way to do it. And we were like being against everything and showing our titties against them.
No, but that's interesting because a lot of people wouldn't think of burlesque as a way to reclaim your political autonomy or your personal autonomy, and it becomes a much more profound idea. This is why I wanted to interview you guys.
And also another reason why burlesque is always going to be directed, connected to politicals, it is because it's made by women. Let's start from there, because during the time the women were not allowed to do theater. Women with power of your sexuality or your erotism, that's already something that is political. The queer people, the drag queens, all of the people that is not accepted in the normal canon is the people that is always creating the cabaret, they creating the burlesque scene. We have been always the outcast, so that makes us political.
But it also makes you guys inspiring to people who feel like they need a hero, you know? A hero with feathers and rhinestones. I love it.
Exactly.
This was so great to talk to you guys.
Bien.
Bueno. Hasta luego, adiós. Thank you so much, Lulú and Yiste and Jordi. Now, if you would like to know more about the burlesque events that Lulú and Yiste are involved in together and separately, as well as the Barcelona Burlesque meeting, you can check out their Instagram accounts, which I will link in the description below.